34-year-old actor Jonathan Majors was convicted of assault and harassment charges in a New York courtroom on December the 18th of 2023, bringing his Manhattan trial to an end after nearly 2 weeks. Majors had been reportedly on a fast track to Hollywood stardom after his turn in the critically acclaimed 2019 film The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Following his breakout success, Majors starred in a few more major films, including one directed by Spike Lee, before donning the mantle of Marvel villain Kang for a run in the MCU. The Los Angeles Times said that the star brought his Hollywood and commercial opportunities to a screeching halt. On the day in question, he was arrested over a confrontation involving his girlfriend, at the time 30-year-old Grace Jabari. During a car ride the previous night, he had allegedly assaulted Jabari after she read a message that was sent to him by another woman. According to Jabari and her legal team, Majors seized the choreographer's hand hard enough to fracture it and also struck her on the face before forcibly shoving her into a chauffeured vehicle. Jabari was then hospitalized for minor injuries. Majors' trial began on December the 4th, during which Jabari testified and got emotional, recalling her relationship with him. The two met in August of 2021 on the set of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. The prosecution detailed previous incidents of Majors' alleged aggressive behavior. Jabari said that while the star prepared for a role in magazine Dreams in June of 2022, he became inexplicably enraged and began acting with an extreme degree of aggression. In an audio clip presented in court, Majors could be heard criticizing Jabari for not living up to the standards set by the spouses of famous black men like Coretta Scott King and Michelle Obama. He was heard saying that he was a great man, and he added that there needs to be a great woman who makes sacrifices. Shortly after, Majors was found guilty of third-degree assault and second-degree harassment. Marvel cut ties with the actor. Subsequent information indicated that Majors would be sentenced in early 2024. Number 19. Nia Rivera. In November of 2017, 31-year-old singer-actress Nia Rivera was arrested in West Virginia and charged with misdemeanor domestic battery after she allegedly hit her husband, Ryan Dorsey, aged 34. Rivera, who was known for portraying Santana Lopez on the series Glee, married Dorsey in 2014 but filed for divorce after 2 years of marriage. In October of 2017, she called off the separation. On the evening of November the 25th, Rivera took Dorsey and her toddler son, Josie, out on a walk to look at the night sky, just outside Dorsey's Chesapeake home. She claimed that she wanted to show the stars to her son Josie, who was in a stroller. Rivera started pushing the stroller up a small hill, then let go, causing it to roll backward toward Dorsey. Fortunately, he caught the runaway stroller. Rivera became belligerent, yelling at Dorsey, who was pushing the stroller directly home. Rivera's temper flared and she reportedly began punching her husband in the face and on the back of his head. At that point, Dorsey called 911. He later told the responding officer that he suspected his wife had been acting strangely because she was intoxicated. Rivera was arrested and subsequently released on a $1,000 bond. She refiled for divorce a month later, and in January of 2018, the domestic battery charge was dismissed at the request of Dorsey, who'd notified both the prosecution and the defense counsel that he was no longer seeking prosecution. On June the 14th of 2018, they finalized their divorce, sharing joint custody of their son. In 2020, Dorsey took sole custody of Josie after Rivera's death. In July of that year, Rivera and Josie had visited Lake Piru in Los Padres National Forest in California. The mother was declared a missing person after her son was found alone in their rented boat at the reservoir on July the 8th. 5 days later, Rivera's body was found by divers. The sheriff said that Rivera and Josie might have found themselves caught in a rip current and struggled to get back to the boat. saying that she likely mustered enough energy to save her son but not enough to save herself. The Ventura County Medical Examiner released an autopsy report stating that the cause of death was accidental drowning and that there was no evidence of injury or intoxication. Number 18. Kuba Goodin Jr. A civil suit was brought against Kuba Goodin Jr. on November the 22nd of 2023 by two women whose assault cases against the Oscar-winning actor had underlaid a criminal prosecution that ended with him pleading guilty but serving no jail time. In a complaint filed in a New York State court in Manhattan, one of the plaintiffs, Jasmine Abbey, said that Goodin kissed her without her consent in September 2018 while she was working as a waitress at a New York City nightclub. The other plaintiff, Kelsey Harbert, accused Goodin of groping her breast in June 2019 at another establishment in the city. He pleaded guilty in April 2022 to a misdemeanor charge of forcibly touching Abbey. The charge was downgraded 6 months later to harassment, to which Goodin also pleaded guilty after complying with a plea agreement that required alcohol and behavior modification treatment, as well as no further arrests in a designated period of time. Abbey and Harbert's lawyer, Gloria Allred, said that her clients had been deprived of the justice they sought in the criminal case. Allred added that the women were now pursuing justice and accountability in their civil cases. Abbey and Harbert were seeking unspecified damages for assault and battery under the Adult Survivors Act. This wasn't the only civil lawsuit filed against Goodin. According to the New York Times, an unnamed woman had taken legal action against a 55-year-old star, accusing him of an assault that took place one summer night in 2013. She filed the lawsuit in 2020, seeking $6 million. Records indicated that in June of 2023, Goodin settled the case in Manhattan federal court before it went to trial. The terms, however, weren't disclosed. Number 17. Cast members from The Vampire Diaries. Weeks before the first season of The Vampire Diaries was set to premiere in September of 2009, several cast members landed behind bars in Georgia. TMZ initially reported that 4 cast members, namely Nina Dobrev, Sarah Cannon, Kayla Ewell, and Candice Acola, were arrested on August the 22nd after they flashed motorists. The tabloid also stated that photographer Tyler Shields was arrested and fined $4,000 after the incident on Interstate 75. Although the group were all arrested and the bond was paid, series writer Karina Adley McKenzie revealed that the group had just been taking photographs together. In 2023, McKenzie told fans on Twitter that it had actually been a major misunderstanding. She said that the shoot hadn't been intended for the show but was simply for a photographer friend on the bridge. McKenzie further claimed that the reported flashing was actually a camera flash and was misinterpreted by law enforcement. Ultimately, the misunderstanding was cleared up. Number 16. Eric Menya, Rodney Shaw, and Addie Richardson at approximately 11:40 p.m. on August the 25th of 2023. Police responded to Luca Lounge in the uptown Buckhead district of Atlanta, Georgia, after receiving reports of a dispute involving former stars from the hit reality show Love and Hip Hop. Upon arrival at the restaurant, the responding officer observed a couple of patrons in a physical altercation with the security guards of the establishment. The officer attempted to de-escalate the situation, but the patrons in question became physically aggressive towards him. The situation was eventually contained, and the group was escorted out of the business and placed under arrest. The police said that prior to the altercation, the suspects had been asked several times to leave the lounge by security guards. The 4 suspects, identified as Erica Menya, Rodney Shaw, Addie Richardson, and Kareem Cadet, were charged with willful obstruction of a law enforcement officer. Menya and Shaw, both aged 35, were also accused of simple battery, and the former was charged with simple battery against a police officer. Cadet was charged with simple assault. Number 15. Allison Mack. In April of 2018, American actress Allison Mack was accused of committing various crimes as a high-ranking member of the cult NXIVM. Founded in 1998, the New York-based organization operated under the guise of a corporation that offered executive success programs. Mack, who is best known for her role as Superman's confidant on the series Smallville, joined NXIVM in 2006. She eventually worked her way up to becoming second in command to Keith Raniere, who was the organization's founder. According to prosecutors, Mack created a secret female-only subgroup within NXIVM that recruited other women as slaves under the facade of women's empowerment. Mack would allegedly order her recruits to be intimate with Raniere and send him nude photographs once they joined the group. In exchange, the women received various benefits, including money. In 2017, several former NXIVM members exposed the group's cult-like operation, eventually leading to Raniere's arrest in March of 2018. A month later, on April the 20th, the FBI took Mack into custody on charges of trafficking conspiracy, and forced labor conspiracy. Following her release from the Metropolitan Detention Center on a $5 million bond, she was held under house arrest in California in the custody of her parents. A year later, 35-year-old Mack pleaded guilty to racketeering and racketeering conspiracy and admitted extortion and forced labor under state law. Before sentencing, she begged forgiveness from her victims through a letter which was filed with the court by her lawyers. In her letter, she stated, "This was the biggest mistake and regret of my life." On June the 30th of 2021, she received a 3-year prison term to be followed by 3 years of probation. In addition to her sentence, she was ordered to perform 1,000 hours of community service and pay a fine of $20,000. The U.S. attorney would later credit Mack for the detailed and highly corroborated information she'd provided in the investigation and prosecution of other NXIVM members. Number 14. Christopher MacDonald. 62-year-old Christopher MacDonald, known most prominently for appearing as Adam Sandler's mortal enemy in the 1996 golf comedy Happy Gilmore, was arrested for driving under the influence shortly before 9:30 p.m. on October the 28th of 2017. The actor had driven in the Lake Arrowhead area of California. He flung his classic silver Porsche off the highway, taking out a gas meter at a local supermarket and ending up in an embankment. An eyewitness said that MacDonald told responding law enforcement of his stardom in an attempt to escape punishment. Nevertheless, MacDonald was booked at the Big Bear jail and subsequently released without bail. He was later sentenced to 35 hours of community service and 3 years of probation after pleading guilty to DUI. The actor was also sentenced to 1 day in jail, but received credit for time served immediately after his initial arrest. This wasn't MacDonald's first drunk driving case. Records indicated that the man was taken into custody in 2013 for DWI in Wilmington, North Carolina. During that arrest, his blood alcohol content was almost double the legal limit for driving. Number 13. Daniel Joseph Serafini. On June the 5th of 2021, 70-year-old Robert Gary Spohr and his wife, 68-year-old Wendy Wood, were found unresponsive with gunshot wounds at their residence on West Lake Boulevard in Homewood, California. Placer County deputies had responded to the scene and learned that Spohr had died after being shot at point-blank range. Wood was still alive and was flown to Renown Hospital in Reno, Nevada, where she was treated for injuries to her head. She was eventually released but died a year later. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, investigators reviewed surveillance footage from the couple's home, which showed a masked man wearing a hood around the property for a couple of hours before the shooting. No one was initially identified as a suspect, and the case went cold. In light of new evidence years later, detectives identified the couple's son-in-law, 49-year-old Daniel Joseph Serafini, and Serafini's former nanny, 33-year-old Samantha Scott, as the suspects. On October the 20th of 2023, the pair were arrested, but the evidence, motives, and how Scott was connected were unclear as the arrest warrants in the case were sealed. Serafini had played in Major League Baseball for 7 years, jumping from teams such as the Minnesota Twins, San Diego Padres, Chicago Cubs, Cincinnati Reds, Pittsburgh Pirates, and Colorado Rockies. He was suspended in 2007 for 50 games after he tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. He didn't return to the MLB and later opened a bar in Sparks, Nevada, which was featured on an episode of the show Bar Rescue. CBS News reported that many assumed that money could have been the alleged motive for Serafini based on his reality show appearance. The latest updates indicated that the two suspects pleaded not guilty and waived their right to a speedy trial in November of 2023. Number 12. Monica Danger Leon. In February of 2010, 22-year-old Monica Danger Leon, who was one of the stars of the VH1 show For the Love of Ray J, was detained by police over an arson investigation. Leon had allegedly started a fire in her Hollywood apartment. The local fire department responded to the scene and extinguished the fire. After authorities looked into the scene, they arrested Leon pending further investigation. She was being held under a 72-hour watch due to an incident that had transpired 2 months earlier. In that incident, Leon was placed on a 5150 psychiatric hold after an incident involving her newborn daughter. The details of the incident were undisclosed, but after getting into an argument with the baby's father, Leon shaved off her head. It was believed that the woman had some personal issues as a result of postpartum depression and spent a week in a psychiatric hospital in Northern California. It never became clear what legal ramifications Leon faced, as there was very little additional information provided regarding her case. Number 11. Taylor Lil Bit Wright. TMZ said that 28-year-old North Carolina woman Taylor Wright had a ton of legal trouble after she was arrested twice in October of 2018. Wright, who was also known as Lil Bit, had starred in the first 2 seasons of the American reality television series Party Down South. Her first arrest stemmed from an incident in June of 2018, during which she and husband, Jake Mapp, had an argument. After Mapp went to his parents' house to calm down, Wright followed him there and continued the altercation. At some point during their ensuing argument, Mapp's mother intervened and Wright punched her in the eye. Initially, the mother didn't press charges, but 4 months later she went to the police, filed a report, and a warrant was issued for Wright's arrest. The woman was arrested on October the 22nd. After her release, she was again arrested 2 days later for taking her children out of their home state of Virginia to North Carolina, which was a violation of her custody agreement with their father. Despite landing herself in jail twice within 2 days, Wright appeared with smiles in all of her mugshots. She later told TMZ that her mother-in-law had gone to the police for revenge after she left her husband. Wright also claimed that during the altercation, she was defending herself and accidentally hit her mother-in-law. It was unclear what sentences she received, if any. Number 10. Sergio Brown. 35-year-old Illinois man Sergio Brown, a former NFL player, was accused of murdering his mother, 73-year-old Myrtle Simmons Brown, in September of 2023. Sergio had played for the New England Patriots in 2010 and subsequently had short stints with other teams. He turned away from the spotlight following his retirement in 2016, but made headlines again on September the 16th of 2023 when desperate family members reported him and his mother missing to the Maywood police. On the day of the report, Myrtle's lifeless body was found wrapped in a sheet behind tall grass near a creek behind her home in Chicago's Maywood suburb. Her blood was also found on the home's back patio. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office determined that the victim had died from blunt force trauma and ruled her death a homicide. DNA evidence from 2 men was found under the woman's nails. One was a match to DNA found on Sergio's toothbrush. Investigators reviewed surveillance cameras in the area and learned that Sergio had burned items in a fire pit on the evening of September the 14th. They also found out that hours later, Sergio bought an airline ticket online and flew from Chicago, Illinois to Cancun, Mexico in the early hours of September the 15th. On September the 18th, Sergio resurfaced, uploading a video to Instagram. In the video, the former defensive back called the death of his mother fake news and said that it had to be the FBI because they got the power to do some shit. Sergio added, in early October, the suspect was detained by Mexican authorities and consequently extradited to Chicago. He later pleaded not guilty to charges of first-degree murder and concealment of a body. As of the latest update, Sergio was being held at the Cook County Jail while he awaited his trial.
Number 9. Michael Brer. In the early 2010s, actor Michael Brer, known for his role in the Ugly Betty series and Step Up 3D, was struggling with money and a waning career. It's believed that these aspects caused him to suffer a horrific mental breakdown. In 2010, Brer used a 3-foot ceremonial Freemason sword to kill his mother, 55-year-old Yannick. The police were called to the woman's Brooklyn apartment after neighbors reported screams coming from the residence. They claimed having heard Brer repeatedly shouting, "Repent," as well as Bible verses. Officers entered the apartment and were forced to use a taser on him. They found Yannick kneeling in a blood-splattered bathroom. She had nearly been decapitated after being repeatedly struck with the sword. Brer would later claim that he'd done God's work and that he hadn't killed his mother but the demon inside her. Following a psychiatric evaluation, he was charged with second-degree murder and criminal possession of a weapon. Number 8. Lil Kim. On September the 19th of 2005, Lil Kim began serving a 366-day prison sentence at a federal detention center in Philadelphia for her conviction on charges stemming from a 2001 shootout outside a New York City radio station. The shootout happened after Lil Kim's entourage crossed paths with a rival rap group, Capone and Noriega, as they were leaving the WQH2-FM or Hot 97 radio station. Years earlier, Foxy Brown, a female rapper from the Capone and Noriega group, had insulted Lil Kim in her song Bang Bang. When confronted about the insult by Lil Kim's entourage outside the studio, the shooting started. One man was hurt and several people were arrested. Kim hadn't fired, but in an attempt to cover for her own entourage in court, Kim had perjured herself, and she was convicted on 4 counts of perjury and 1 count of conspiracy. Because Kim confessed to her crimes and admitted that she had lied to a grand jury, she was sentenced to 366 days as opposed to the maximum of 20 years that the offenses carried. Number 7. Salman Khan. Once considered Bollywood's top leading man and one of the most commercially successful Indian actors in history, Salman Khan was convicted of culpable homicide only to have the charges against him dropped in mysterious circumstances. While driving his car under the influence of alcohol, Khan crashed into a bakery in Mumbai in 2002. A homeless person who was sleeping on the pavement outside the establishment was killed after being run over, and 4 others were injured. Police Constable Ravindra Patil was part of Khan's security detail. He was a prime witness in the case and the only one who could have secured Khan's homicide conviction. Patil was reportedly pressured by the police and Khan's lawyers to change his initial statement that the actor had been driving the car while inebriated. He went missing during the trial and was fired from the police force in November of 2006, ironically for failing to make an appearance during hearings. What happened in the period that Patil had gone missing remains a mystery. About a year later, he was found on the streets of Siri. His family had abandoned him and he was suffering from tuberculosis. The severely emaciated 29-year-old was admitted to a hospital where he died. A few days before his passing, he reportedly told a friend that he'd stood by his words, but that his department didn't stand by him. Due to a lack of evidence, Khan was acquitted of all charges in December of 2015. Number 6. Howard Hughes. In the late 1920s, eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes gained fame in Hollywood by using his vast fortune to produce big-budget films. His celebrity status would reach greater dimensions for his work in aviation. His Hughes H-1 Racer was the last aircraft built by a private individual to set the world speed record. While at the top of his international fame, Hughes was involved in a 1936 car accident that, in contrast to other aspects of his life, received very little media coverage. On July the 11th, he fatally struck a pedestrian with his car in Los Angeles. He was certified as sober, but an attending doctor noted he'd been drinking. A witness stated that Hughes had been driving fast and erratically, adding that the pedestrian had been sitting in the safety zone of a streetcar stop. Hughes was detained on suspicion of negligent homicide, but his lawyer secured his release pending the report of a coroner. By the time it was completed, the witness had changed his story, claiming that the victim had jumped in front of Hughes's car. Within just 5 days of the accident, the billionaire was cleared. The suspicious circumstances surrounding the case have led some to hypothesize that his wealth and celebrity status had at the very least expedited the legal proceedings related to the case. Number 5. Liu Yong Bao. Chinese man Liu Yong Bao became an acclaimed author, but it was ultimately revealed that in creating his novels, he drew inspiration from the murders he'd committed. In November of 1995, Yong Bao and accomplice Wang Muming checked into a guest house with the intention of robbing the place. To cover their tracks, the men then used hammers and clubs to kill a guest, as well as the elderly couple who owned the guest house and their teenage grandson. Yong Bao would live as a free man for more than 2 decades, during which he reinvented himself as an award-winning writer and minor celebrity. In the preface to his 2012 novel, A Guilty Secret, he even wrote that he contemplated a story about a writer who got away with committing a series of murders. The authorities had recovered a cigarette butt from the 1995 crime scene, from which they took a DNA sample. After looking at thousands of individuals and traveling through 15 provinces, they arrived at Yong Bao as a suspect. Undercover officers were able to trick him into providing a saliva sample by claiming they wanted to research his family tree. A lab test confirmed the match. Both Yong Bao and his accomplice were sentenced to death. Number 4. Don King. During his controversial career as a promoter, Don King became one of the most famous figures in boxing. He promoted some of the sport's most prominent names such as Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr., Bernard Hopkins, and many others. Before he got into boxing, however, Don King killed 2 people in incidents 13 years apart. Shortly after dropping out of university in the early 1950s, he ran an illegal bookmaking operation in northeastern Ohio. In 1954, King shot and killed a man who was reportedly trying to rob one of his gambling houses, an incident that was later ruled as a justifiable homicide. In 1967, Don King stomped a man to death. His victim was an employee named Sam Garrett, who owed him £600. He was convicted of voluntary manslaughter and spent 3 years and 11 months in prison. He was pardoned by the governor of Ohio in 1983. Throughout his career, King was investigated for possible links to organized crime, such as mob boss John Gotti. He pled the Fifth Amendment when questioned about his Gotti connection in 1992. He was also sued by a number of fighters, including Ali and Tyson, who claimed he'd stolen money from them. Number 3. Johnny Lewis. Actor Johnny Lewis started making TV appearances in his late teens, before landing a role on the first 2 seasons of the hit FX series Sons of Anarchy. In the early 2010s, Lewis suffered head injuries in a motorcycle accident. He declined getting an MRI, and in the aftermath, he started exhibiting behavior that was described as bizarre and erratic. From 2011 to 2012, he was arrested for hitting 2 men in the head with a bottle during a fight, as well as for trying to break into a woman's house. He was released in September of 2012, but a parole officer expressed grave concerns that he'd continue to be a threat to the community. 5 days later, Lewis killed his landlady, 81-year-old Carol Davis, by strangling her with his bare hands and striking her in the head. He also killed her pet cat. Lewis jumped a fence to an adjacent house where he assaulted the homeowner and a house painter. He then returned to Davis's property where he fell or jumped to his death from the patio roof or garage. No drugs or alcohol were found in his system, and the sudden spurts of violence were attributed to an undiagnosed psychological disorder.
Today's topic was requested by Kalichi Godwin is my name. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below.
Number 2. Big Lurch. Rapper Big Lurch, who'd achieved some mainstream success with the group Cosmic Slop Shop, was arrested in 2002 for the gruesome murder of his roommate. The rapper, born Antron Singleton, was living with 21-year-old Tanisha Isis and her boyfriend at an apartment in LA. A friend found Isis at the residence with her chest torn open and her lungs ripped out. A 3-inch blade had broken off and become embedded in her shoulder bone. There were also teeth marks on her lungs and face. The witness saw Singleton standing in the street. He was unclothed, covered in blood and staring blankly at the sky. After the 26-year-old was arrested, a medical examination found pieces of human flesh in his stomach that weren't his own. Singleton claimed that he and the victim's boyfriend had smoked PCP the day before and blamed the murder on psychosis induced by the drug. The insanity defense didn't hold up, and Singleton, who would be known as the Cannibal Rapper, was sentenced to life in prison. The victim's mother filed a wrongful death lawsuit against him and his record label. It claimed that the label had provided him with the drugs in order to purposefully trigger violent behavior, so that he'd be more marketable as a gangster rapper.
Stick around if you'd like to still watch our episode about 9 celebrities who fell off their pedestal. That's coming up right after number 1.
Number 1. O.J. Simpson. Orenthal James Simpson, known as O.J. or The Juice, is often mentioned among the greatest running backs in NFL history, but his illustrious career was overshadowed by his infamous murder trial. In 1994, Simpson's ex-wife, Nicole Brown, and her friend, Ron Goldman, were found stabbed to death outside the former's LA condo. Simpson, who had a history of physically abusing, stalking, and threatening Brown, became the main suspect in the case. On June the 17th, TV stations interrupted the NBA Finals, and millions watched a live broadcast of a lengthy police chase with Simpson's white Ford Bronco. It was driven by his longtime friend, former NFL player Al Cowlins, who was later acquitted. Simpson's trial was one of the most controversial and widely publicized events in American history. There was massive DNA evidence against him, including his blood recovered from the scene, which was verified by 3 separate laboratories with no discrepancies found. Building a case on DNA evidence was still a novelty at the time. Simpson's high-profile legal team, led by Johnny Cochran, was able to convince the jury that the samples had been corrupted, planted, or mishandled. In the context of racial tensions that permeated the US, the defense suggested Simpson had been framed. Cochran focused his attention on a bloody glove retrieved from the scene, which he claimed had been planted by a racist LAPD officer. While still wearing a pair of latex gloves, Simpson tried on the glove and its pair during the trial, but they didn't fit, prompting Cochran to famously utter, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." On October 3rd of 1995, the jury reached a not guilty verdict. In a 1997 civil suit initiated by the victims' families, Simpson was ordered to pay $33.5 million for their wrongful deaths. He remained a free man until 2008, when he was convicted of armed robbery and kidnapping. In 2007, he and accomplices broke into a Las Vegas hotel room and robbed a man of sports memorabilia at gunpoint. Simpson claimed that the memorabilia had initially been stolen from him. He was paroled after serving a mandatory 9-year sentence.
In early 2023, Native American actor Nathan Chasing Horse, who was born on the Rosebud Indian Reservation, was accused of assaulting indigenous girls over the course of roughly 2 decades. 46-year-old Chasing Horse, best known for his role in the Kevin Costner-led Best Picture winner Dances with Wolves, gained a reputation as a so-called medicine man and holy person among tribes across the United States and in Canada, claiming to perform healing ceremonies. According to investigators, he used his power and influence to create a cult-like group called The Circle, which he used to prey on young women. The assault allegations against Chasing Horse dated back to the early 2000s. His followers reportedly offered their teen daughters for him to take as wives. Following an investigation in late 2022, SWAT officers raided the man's North Las Vegas home on January the 31st of 2023. During the course of the raid, officials seized memory cards containing videos of the assaults, multiple firearms, 41 pounds of marijuana, and psychedelic mushrooms. Chasing Horse was subsequently arrested and booked into the Clark County Jail, with his bond later set at $300,000. On February the 8th, he was charged with exploitation of children, among other serious offenses. 2 weeks later, a Nevada grand jury indicted him on 19 charges that included kidnapping, lewdness, drug trafficking, assault, and child abuse. As of the latest developments, Chasing Horse had pleaded not guilty to assaulting 2 women in Clark County and was facing criminal prosecution in both Montana and Canada. Number 8. Lonnie Willison. After a tumultuous 2-year marriage between former Baywatch actor Jeremy Jackson and fitness model Lonnie Willison, the latter appeared to be homeless as she was spotted pushing a shopping cart through the streets of Los Angeles. In December of 2012, the 29-year-old woman tied the knot with Jackson in Laguna Beach. While the 32-year-old actor was intoxicated in August of 2014, he allegedly strangled and beat Willison in their bedroom during the course of an argument. Willison was left with 2 broken ribs, an injured neck, and scratches on her face and body in the aftermath. Los Angeles officers were called to the scene and arrested Jackson, who was consequently accused of attempted murder. However, the case was dropped when Willison decided not to press charges, saying she was scared of a potential retaliation on Jackson's part. After their divorce, Willison reportedly suffered a mental breakdown worsened by addictions to alcohol and crystal meth. In 2018, she was barely recognizable, as images of her rummaging through a shopping cart filled with her belongings surfaced online. In a YouTube interview published in May of 2023, Willison blamed her ex for her precipitous downfall. Number 7. Vanessa Marquez. Actress Vanessa Marquez's active career in the 90s eventually came to an end due to serious mental health issues, including bipolar disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and agoraphobia. In 2018, she was reported to also be suffering from celiac disease, fibromyalgia, seizures, and depression. On August the 30th of that year, her friend reportedly called the fire department in South Pasadena, California, because Marquez was experiencing seizures. The caller requested paramedics and mental health experts to be sent to the woman's residence. Responding police officers found Marquez's home in utter disarray. When they found the former actress upstairs, they urged her to go to a hospital for treatment. An argument ensued when she subsequently refused. The woman allegedly pulled a BB gun out of her purse at one point. She aimed it at the officers, prompting them to retreat downstairs. Police body cam footage revealed that Marquez pleaded with the officers to kill her as she continued to point the BB gun at them. Ultimately, 2 officers who thought the weapon was a real firearm shot her a total of 12 times. She was taken to a hospital where she succumbed to gunshot wounds in her torso shortly after 2:30 p.m. No criminal charges were brought against the officers involved in the shooting, who insisted they thought Marquez posed a threat to their safety. The deceased woman's mother filed a wrongful death claim against the city of South Pasadena in February of 2019. The suit was settled for a reported $450,000 2 years later. Number 6. Jennifer Shah. A 49-year-old American television personality from Salt Lake City, Utah, pleaded guilty to a conspiracy criminal charge in 2022. Jennifer Shah, who was a cast member of the reality television series The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, played an integral role in a nationwide telemarketing scam that began targeting people in 2012. Many of the victims were elderly people who Shah and her co-conspirators were able to defraud repeatedly until nothing was left in their bank accounts. Following the arrest of her accomplices, the TV personality was taken into custody on March the 30th of 2021, charged with 2 offenses related to conspiracy. A week later, she pleaded not guilty to both charges and was released on a $1 million personal recognizance bond with a $250,000 cash security. After changing her plea to guilty on July the 11th of the following year, the judge agreed to drop the additional charge of conspiracy to commit money laundering. On January the 8th of 2023, Shah was sentenced to 78 months of incarceration and ordered to forfeit $6,500,000, 30 luxury items and 78 counterfeit luxury items. She was also required to pay over $6 million in restitution. Number 5. Kris Wu. A 30-year-old Chinese-Canadian singer and actor was arrested following the emergence of assault allegations posted on social media by a 19-year-old Chinese woman named Maes on July the 8th of 2021. Through the social media platform Weibo, Du claimed that Kris Wu took advantage of her while she was intoxicated at his home on December the 5th of 2020. She went on to write that there were 7 other victims as well. Wu denied the claims, but multiple companies for which he served as a brand ambassador subsequently cut ties with him. On July the 31st, Beijing Chaoyang District Police detained Wu and formally arrested him 16 days later on suspicion of assault. In November of the following year, the Chaoyang District People's Court convicted Wu of assault and assembling a crowd to engage in promiscuous activities. He was sentenced to a total of 13 years in prison and deportation from China upon his release. As of the latest updates, Wu appealed for a second trial in February of 2023 after finding a new witness to testify against Du. Number 4. Marie Avgeropoulos. In the early hours of August the 5th of 2018, Canadian actress Marie Avgeropoulos was arrested for injuring her 41-year-old boyfriend. The incident occurred while the couple were traveling along the 134 freeway in Glendale, California. A verbal argument ensued between the two, culminated in 32-year-old Avgeropoulos striking her partner several times, causing minor injuries to his head, neck, and arm. The victim then called 911 and Avgeropoulos was arrested at approximately 1:15 a.m. The woman, who starred in the post-apocalyptic sci-fi television series The 100, was booked into jail on a domestic violence charge shortly before 2:30 a.m. Later that morning, her boyfriend posted her $50,000 bail and pushed for the charges to be dropped. The attack was allegedly triggered by an adverse reaction she was having to medication, and on September the 17th, she pleaded not guilty. The case was formally dismissed in December after prosecutors accepted that there was no intentional act of violence. 20-year-old TikTok influencer Michelle Melody, who accumulated nearly 1 million followers with her online content, was arrested after allegedly stabbing her boyfriend in August of 2022. The attack in question unfolded at the young woman's apartment in Thurgau, Switzerland, during the course of a domestic dispute. The unnamed 19-year-old victim was seriously injured and rushed to a hospital where surgery was performed to mend his multiple stab wounds. Fortunately, he was discharged the following day. Melody later posted online saying, "He asked me if I'm bad. I said I'm the worst." In early September of 2022, her arrest was confirmed by the local public prosecutor's office, though no further information was provided at that time. Number 1. Cara Delevingne. Prominent model and actress Cara Delevingne exhibited erratic behavior on September the 5th of 2022, which landed her in national headlines and caused many of her fans to grow concerned for her well-being. On the day in question, as the 30-year-old was making her way to Van Nuys Airport in a Chevy Suburban, her feet were reportedly dangling from the window as the car made its way through traffic. She arrived 2 hours late for a flight on Jay-Z's private plane. Moments later, Delevingne deboarded the plane for unclear reasons. She appeared jittery as she subsequently talked on her cell phone and dropped the device several times. Meanwhile, her bags were unloaded from the plane and placed back into the SUV. Footage of the incident left fans bewildered and concerned for the woman. In a comment posted online, one of her fans asked, "What's going on with Cara Delevingne? I feel so sad for her." 6 months later, Delevingne informed Vogue magazine that childhood trauma had caused her to spiral into alcohol and drug addiction. She reportedly spent most of her younger years looking after her bipolar and heroin-addicted mother, which she attributed to her damaged mental state. On March the 9th of 2023, CNN reported that Delevingne was 4 months sober after undergoing treatment that incorporated meditation and yoga. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be eaten alive by a school of piranhas or by a cannibal celebrity? Let us know in the comments section below.